Okay, we're here with Cindy Hogan. She's a USA Today bestselling author. She's going to offer us a bunch of her tips today. So thanks for being with us today, Cindy. I really, really appreciate it.
Excited to be here. It's going to be fun.
Okay, so first of all, just tell me and for those listeners who don't know who you are, a little bit about you and any goals or dreams that you've accomplished.
Well, there's so many goals and dreams, but first, so I'm a mother of two amazing girls. I just became a grandmother 2 years ago.
Oh, I
And
didn't know that. That's awesome.
grandbaby. So now there's a girl and a boy, which is really fun. And I'm an author. I'm also a teacher, which I love. I love too many things. That's my problem. Love to be in the garden, love hiking. There aren't very many things that I don't like. Maybe being on a ship in the middle of the ocean, but that's one of the only things.
Yeah.
I think my whole life has run around setting goals and either achieving them or working towards them. And really for me, the journey is what is important and not really whether or not I reach that goal. And so while I'm striving to reach whatever goal it is, I become a better person. You just do. When you set goals and you try to change yourself to be able to achieve those goals, you become somebody different. One of the big goals that I have had was to become the best teacher that I personally could ever become. And so after a lot of failing, trying, doing different things as a teacher, I finally grew a huge German program at the school that I was at. And then, always whenever you achieve something, something new comes along. And that's probably a big goal. People would see that as a big goal. And it took a lot of effort and a lot of work. And then there are little goals. The most recent one, my goal was to get my garden in before Mother's Day this year. And so it may have been 8:30 at night on Saturday, but it is in. And
Way to go.
Right before some storms came today, so it ended up being perfect too. So that's a little one that just about anybody would be able to attain to.
Yeah.
But I did it.
You did it. You did it.
Yeah.
So I know that one of your big dreams that you've accomplished is that you're a USA Today bestselling author. Now it's kind of a big deal, So tell me a little bit about that journey, because you said that the journey is the most important part to you, So
Yeah.
talk to me a little bit about that.
So I think it's the author world is an interesting world. And you're always getting constant feedback from the people who read your books and the people who critique your books before they're even put out there into the world for mainstream people to read them. But one of the big steps, I think, for an author, for most authors, is they think I want to be a New York Times bestseller or a USA Today bestseller. And it's a kind of a natural progression for most people. And I thought, by somehow that would validate me as an author if I achieved that. And so I went for it. And the funny thing is that when you achieve things like that, it's a moment in time. It's like a little blip. I thought, maybe I got more readers because of it, because I have that to put on my books. And maybe within the author world and the reader world, it does mean something about my writing. But before I even became that, I'd already sold over 1 million books, so it's kind of like, kind of a stepping stone. And I thought it would mean more to me than it did, I guess.
Okay.
And so, yes, it was really hard to get there. And what's really funny about it is the book that got me there is kind of this little tiny piece of this new series that I've been developing for the past 7 years. I mean, that was like, I'm thinking, and I can't remember exactly, I think that was in 2015, but I'm not sure. And that book, I think, is just kind of simmering. I guess I haven't learned the lessons that I need to learn in order to get that series out yet. And in fact, I've written the first book for that series twice, gone through editing, critiquing, everything, completely finished books, and there's just something that's just not right. Two totally different first books for the same exact series.
Oh my gosh.
There's something that I'm missing. And, I think if we all can kind of tap into that inner self, that I like to call it the spirit telling me and whispering. And someone might say, oh, you're totally wasting your time. Just, put them out there. My readers will read it, right?
Uh-huh.
But at the same time, I know that maybe I'm just learning about exactly what it is. I know I'm supposed to write that series, but it might not either just be the time, or I might just not know enough, or I'm just not ready to complete it. So anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting.
That is interesting. So let's go back. I didn't take you from the beginning. How did you even get started with writing? What did the beginning look like?
Oh shoot, it's so cliche. I hate to even say it.
I know, we're supposed to stay away from cliches, right?
I know. I had a dream.
Did you really?
Yeah.
You had a dream. Okay, that's awesome.
I was like teaching, loving it. It was just what I knew I was called to do for forever. Just teach, teach, teach. And I had reached a point where I was really good at it and had grown a really big program, and I loved the kids so much.
And you would be awesome.
And I had this dream. Yeah. Then I had this dream and I thought, wow, that was so cool. Started telling everybody, oh my gosh, everybody, I have the next blockbuster movie in my head. How do I get it to go into the theaters? And everybody's like, oh, I don't know. Yeah, move to California. And I thought, no, but when things happen and your earth the ground shakes, the earth moves just a little bit, and you know that it's really important, whatever it is. And my students started morphing into some of my characters. I kept thinking about it. I kept dreaming more and more about this crazy scene that I saw. And so I thought, well, if I can't give it to a movie producer right now, there's something important about it. I'll just write it down. And then when I run into a movie producer, because everybody does that, I will give him the idea and he can, do it because it's going to be amazing. Well, I started to write and it was like I became another person. I just couldn't stop writing. And I think that, Heavenly Father was telling me, this is the next step in your journey. You need to get this down. And it was funny because my sister was kind of artsy. Well, she is artsy and she paints. And I thought, I bet she reads books. Because at the time, I didn't even read books, honestly. And so I thought, maybe she'll know if this is any good. I just can't stop writing this. And she's like, oh, this is great. You should come with me to this writers conference. And I thought, why are you going to a writers conference? And so she's a closet writer, she writes, but she doesn't ever want any critique or, anything about what she writes. So I went with her, and by chance, it was like a freak series of events, which is always what happens when you're on the right path.
Yep.
I sat down with the senior editor, Putnam, and he's like, I love this story. I only had 3 chapters written at the time. And he's like, oh, I love this story. You finish it and I'll publish it. And I thought, oh, cool. And I had no clue about the writing community, and that, outside that door, there were 700 people who were dying to get their books published, and they'd been writing for years. And then I went to the conference, like the whole thing. And then I was like, I have no idea what I'm doing. Imposter syndrome everywhere. And I just couldn't write because I thought, who am I to think I can write a book? And I just stopped until further down the road, about 6 months. One of the people I met there called me and we got into a critique group and finished that book.
And did the guy publish it that said he was going to?
So this is the funny part. So now it's a year later and I send in the manuscript, and by now I really know what a big deal it was for that to happen to me, right?
Especially as a first-time author, to have a publisher say that, it's like, holy moly.
And having no writing experience or anything. And so I thought, I'll send this in now. So I sent it in, and the publishing house sent me back this thing and said, he has retired and we are going in a different direction.
Oh, of course, right?
Isn't that the way it goes? But I think that that's exactly what was supposed to happen, for me. And so then I had a neighbor, of course, all of these things when you're going down a path, and it's the right path, things and people come into your path that help you along your way. And he's like, you should just self-publish your book. And I thought, and this was way back in 2011. And that was when self-publishing was super poo-pooed on. Like, it was only if you could never be published would you, if you had a terrible book and you just, that then you would publish that.
Like, that's where the terrible writing goes, kind of.
That's where the terrible writing goes. And so I thought about it and I thought, well, if he was going to publish it, it must be great. So I dumped everything into it, just my whole heart and soul. And as I went, I did a blog and I made it so that other writers wouldn't have to go through everything I went through. Now there's, I think, too much information. Like you don't know where to go, where I had to totally kind of pave the way. This was like the very beginnings of it. And so what I wrote on my blog and stuff was stuff people had no clue about. And now there's just tons of information.
There's so much. So there is so much information out there, right? So if someone is getting started on their writing journey, and let's say they're a mom and they're busy, what would you tell them? Like, where would they even begin to filter that information down and even know where to begin?
Okay. So I'm not putting that question off, but I think I don't want people to make the same mistake that I did. So I think it's super important that you sit down and you say to yourself, what is most important to me? That you step back. Yes, you're going to write a book. You want to write a book. If you have that desire within you to do it, you should do it. But first, you really need to step back and put things in place to make it so that you can be successful in the long run. So I think stepping back and saying, what are the things that are most important to me? What do I really value in life? And then make a list of those. So for me, it was first, God, then my husband and I, our marriage, and then my children. And back then, I did not do this. I just knew that I was writing this book, went full force, and I wish I had done it differently. And then to sit down and say, okay, how do I protect those things while I am growing my dynasty and becoming this other person who is a writer also? Because if you lose those things, if you lose God, you lose your family, you lose your children. Not that I did any of those things, but I did shove them to the side and did a lot of neglect for what I was going for. And I think that's the wrong way to do it. So if you sit back and you say, okay, and even maybe take the time to spend, because especially when you have little kids, your life is busy, right? We define ourselves by our busyness. I'm too busy to do that. I can't do that. Or, oh, I'm just busy all day. Somebody says, what have you been up to? Oh, I'm busy, right? I am so busy. Well, I think if you sit back and you map out everything you do, just write down everything you do for 2 weeks at a minimum, maybe longer, maybe even a month, and take your time to see where you really truly are spending your time. you will find that you have those moments in time. Maybe 5 minutes here, maybe a half hour here. Maybe you sit down because you're exhausted and the kids are taking their nap and you want to watch Netflix and you just want to veg, or whatever you like to do when during your downtime. And then as you see that stuff mapped out, you will find I actually can take those 5 minutes and put them all into the same place. And I can carve out a half hour here to write. Or you could say to yourself, how much is this worth it to me? What can I do and not ruin my relations with my family? What must I do? Every day, what has to be done and at what times, and map it out. And at first you'll be like, especially if you're a creative brain, like if you're a writer, you're a creative brain most of the time. And so you have to really force yourself to do this, because if you set those boundaries and those times, maybe in order to accomplish it, you have to get up a half hour early before anybody else does. Maybe it's an hour once you get on your way. But if you write, if you carve out that time and then you just start writing, things will start to magically fall into place, because your intention becomes no longer an intention, but it becomes real. And when you choose to move forward with something, it's amazing how many different things will come into play to protect that time. Not at first. Let me back up a minute. Because when you first try to go after your dreams, number one, your head is going to tell you, what do you think you're doing? Your family is important. You're ruining everything. Our brains are made to keep us safe. And when we step out of that safe zone that we've been in, even if it's crazy, our lives are crazy. We taking care of our kids, crying, cleaning up messes. Our house is a total trash, making dinner, all of running kids around. All of those things cause this hecticness. And even though it's hectic, our minds love staying the same. It's just a reality. So when you say, I'm going to change my habits so that I can go on a different path, it's like, I don't think so. And so the first step you take forward, it's going to be like, wait a minute, maybe you'll feel like, yes, I feel a glimpse. So like for me, when I started taking that step, I saw a glimpse of what I could become. But then all these things got in the way. No, I have to change diapers. I have to make the meals. So-and-so's sick. So-and-so needs their nose wiped. I've got to change this diaper. All of these things take you away and you think, oh, I can't do that. But if you notice those thoughts in your head, when they come around, you can change them. So who am I to think that I can do this? You say to yourself. And you hear yourself say it. It takes some training to listen to yourself think, but we can all do it. So you hear your mind say that as you try to change a habit or a schedule. And then you say, just give it a laugh. You silly thing, why would you think that I couldn't do this? Why do you think I'm an imposter? You're crazy. And talk back to it. You'll be crazy a little bit, but that's okay. You're changing your brain. And the more that you do that, every time you have that thought and you replace it with something else. And I'm not talking about throwing out wishes or dreams. I'm talking about saying it from a place deep inside of you and saying, that is so silly that you think that I can't do that. I am an excellent writer. I know what I'm doing. I can write amazing and colorful and deep characters. And you replace those thoughts over and over again. Every single time they come up, you will become that person that you are telling yourself you are. Because whoever you tell yourself you are, you are. And I used to think that that was kind of hokey and crazy, but it's real. And so start listening to your thoughts. And as you change, as you map out your schedule and you say, okay, instead, and sometimes it's an instead of, right? Sometimes you carve out time that was just blank time. Other times you, if it's that important to you, you can carve it out and you say, okay, I've taken care of my family's needs. I've taken care of my scripture reading, my prayer, my meditation, or my pondering on what I've read. And then I've done my service. And I'm not talking in a timeline type of a way. You don't have to say, okay, God is first. That means I have to read in the morning. I'm not talking about that. But that you keep everything in perspective. And then you train your brain to believe that you can. And then your brain starts figuring out the different ways that you can accomplish whatever you're telling it. Suddenly you're, instead of bringing along your phone to play some mindless game, you have a craft book on writing in your hands when you're waiting in the car for your kids to come. You're not just sitting there. You are reading a craft book and learning to become a better writer. Why? All because you told yourself, I am an amazing writer. I write deep and thoughtful and interesting characters. Then suddenly you're finding the materials that will make you that person. It's really crazy and it really works.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I just wanted to, I was sitting here nodding like the whole time you're talking. That was incredible. So I'm taking this course right now, this like global course that's trained corporate companies all across the world. And they literally train on what you just said.
Really?
Companies like Coca-Cola and Mercedes-Benz. Yeah, it's called Becoming Your Best. And they talked about how take a step back and look at your most important roles, like
Yes.
wife, mother, writer, define those, and then look at your schedule and plan those in, even in small little 5-minute increments, like you just said.
Yeah.
And there is science behind the thought process that you just said, went through too. It's
Good.
so powerful. I'm like, have you been listening to life coaches every day of your life?
So,
Because that was so good. It's so true. You actually are who you become. And I love that you said that about carpool. It's like, if you're thinking this, then at carpool, you're going to be doing what you need to be doing. If that's your 5-minute window and you've had that time out, and thought about that. I loved all those thoughts. That was incredible.
Yeah. And you don't have to write a whole book in a day. You can for 15 minutes for a year. And when you're a mom with 5 little kids, getting a book out in a year, that's amazing. You just can't go back, right? Don't go back and try to correct it. Go forward, continuously forward in your writing. Then when it's all done and you write the end, even though it's not perfect, then you go back and you fix, right? If you're starting to fix stuff, you'll never get past chapter 3.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
So you just have to keep going forward. I get to the end, maybe because like for me, for my writing process, I go back to what I wrote the day before or the 2 days before, and I read through it and write out to the side what I might change or thoughts that I have, either on paper that I keep a notebook with, or on your computer, have a second document open and just be specific, where exactly you want these things to change. Then when you're done with the book, you go back and you go through the changes. It's really a great way to do it.
But just keep moving forward. Yes. Yes. I love that. Yeah. So really quickly, I have to ask you the question that I ask every mom that I interview. Do you feel like you've been able to put your faith and family first while going after your goals?
Yes, it's something that I learned, right? And I think if we all give ourselves grace and know that in the beginning we're going to be stumbling, it's just like learning anything, learning a language, learning how to take care of our kids. At first, you'll probably do it very poorly. You just will. And you have to be willing to say, dang, I was terrible about that yesterday. And then say, I'm not going to beat myself up about that. I am learning something new. And I am changing what I think about myself and what I know that I'm capable of doing, and go forward with it. For me, I'm an early riser. And so the way I have kind of mapped out my day is I always do, I do my God things first. So I read my scriptures, I do my prayers. Um, I think about what service I might be able to accomplish that day. And it can be something very simple. It doesn't have to be big. And I make sure that I include those things in my day. But I also spend the time going through what I know my goals are for that next day. And that way, I always have my most important priority is taken care of at the very first of the day. For my husband, he does it all in the evening. He is an evening guy. I am a morning person. You have to know you. What works for me may not work for you. What works for your neighbor may work for you, but may not. And so you have to search yourself for your own truths. And then I make sure that I have on my calendar exactly how my week is going to go. It changes. You have to be flexible. But I have it mapped out for perfection. And then I back off from perfection because nobody's perfect, right?
Right.
And I hit the most important things. I make sure that my husband is taking care of what he expects of me, and what I expect of myself to give to him is done and mapped out. The time that I have for him, as well as with my children. And then my writing comes third, right? And so if somebody's sick or somebody has a problem, that's the first thing that gets dropped off. My goal is to finish, right? But it's not at the expense of the most important things in my life. Of course, you can't use that as an excuse to, always not do your writing and not do the things that your hobbies and the things that you want to work towards. You have to be honest with yourself. And integrity, I think, is so key. Once you have that integrity with yourself, if you say you're going to do something, you do it. And if you can find that integrity, your life will be so much easier. So schedule yourself, be honest with yourself, have integrity with your actions and with your relationships.
Yes.
And everything else will fall in place. It just does. When you're moving in the right direction, you're going to run into stumbling blocks, but you will always have those glimmers which tell you deep inside yourself, and we all have that. Yes, this is right. It's hard today, but tomorrow will be better.
Yes.
And it just happens that way. It's beautiful.
Yeah. So I wanted to briefly touch on one thing that you said. So you said, I wish that when my kids were younger and when you were beginning in your early writing career, that you would have done things a little bit differently.
Yes.
Is this what you're talking about, that you would have
Yes.
done differently?
Yeah. So I didn't schedule. I was just sat down. Because I was up early, I just sat down, did everything. Then I ran in without any thought or care for my kids. I've never really stopped reading scriptures or anything like that. That's always kind of been my thing.
Mhm.
But I'd come in and I'd do the very minimum. And that's not what your family or my family deserves. My family deserves my entire presence. While I'm looking at them, I was thinking about my book, what was coming next, what I was going to write next. And there'll be moments in time where that's okay. But it was my constant life for 3 years until I figured out, no, this isn't a good thing. To let your passion overtake the most important things in your life. And so then I learned to set boundaries, and I learned to schedule myself, which I think it's a skill. And any skill can be learned by anyone, no matter if you're creative or you're an analytical person. You can learn to schedule yourself. And then you show up with integrity and follow through with those things that you said you were going to do. And you give them your attention. Don't you hate it when you're talking to somebody and they're looking off, or their eyes are wandering, looking at other people? That's kind of how that would be a good analogy for how I was with all my relationships with my writer friends. It was all about me, 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 me. What am I going to do next? I've got to write this. I've got to do that. Me, 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 me. And when you step outside of that, it can be transformational for your relationships, for your family, for your relationship with Heavenly Father, which is the very most important thing of all.
Yeah.
But it all ties together, right? Your family, it's all a beautiful in concert thing. And go after your dreams, but a dream is just a dream until you actually start going for it. And once you start going for it, you need to set those boundaries and remember what is most important in your life. So sit down, figure that out, and your life will be, my life is so much richer now. I'm not run by my books and my writing. I run my life. I choose what is most important. And one week it may be different from another week. And every year when I set my goals, I always have a family goal, spiritual goal, writing goals. I have different goals in different areas of my life. And then I have to work hard to keep those so that I show that integrity to myself. A lot of times it's hard, but who I become in reaching for those things is the most important thing. Not that I get my book done on this date.
Right, but you've learned those principles of integrity and showing up for yourself and planning what's most important, so you can fit in your writing and fit in time for your kids and husband. It's a really important piece of the puzzle, you know?
Yeah. Don't let those important things fall by the wayside. It's so easy to let that happen.
Yes.
Oh, and by the way, I was going to tell you, I saw your post on melanoma. I just
yes.
a big thing of melanoma taken out of my forehead. See how my eyebrows like Captain Jack Sparrow?
Oh yeah, yeah. Oh,
Come down, but yeah,
I can kind of see the scar a little bit right here.
yeah.
Yeah.
But the plastic surgeon did a really good job. But
Yeah. So it was melanoma cancer?
Yeah, wear your sunscreen.
Yes. Oh my heck. Yes. It's so true. Okay, this could not have gone any better, but our time is up, and I feel like everything you said was just spot on. And I feel like you're in a place where you can look back on your life and say, you know what? I made these few mistakes and this is how I corrected it. And I feel like we've all learned something today for sure.
Well, thanks.
Thanks.
It was fun.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I already feel like a better person just listening to you, for else. It makes me want to go back and revisit a few things, you know, and really think deep about those things that you said.
Good.
So thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you.